I didn't let my friend bring her baby to my wedding, and now she's furious. I knew that weddings came with their fair share of drama, but I never imagined it would happen like this. I've been friends with Sarah for years, close enough that I considered her one of my best friends. But when she asked if she could bring her baby to my wedding, I had to make a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I didn't want to cause any tension, but the thought of a crying baby at my wedding reception filled me with anxiety. In the end, I said no, and what happened afterward has completely changed our friendship. Now Sarah is furious with me, and I'm stuck wondering if I made the right choice. It was a typical day when Sarah reached out to me about my wedding. The invitations had gone out, the dress was perfect, and I was starting to feel like everything was coming together. But then, out of nowhere, Sarah sent me a message that stopped me dead in my tracks. I hope it's okay, but I wanted to ask if I could bring my baby to the wedding. I know it's a big day, but I really don't have anyone to watch her, and I'd feel more comfortable if she could be with me. I stared at the message, feeling a wave of unease wash over me. I had always known Sarah as someone who was a bit more relaxed when it came to social situations, but the thought of a baby at my wedding just didn't sit right with me. I mean, weddings are special occasions, right? They're supposed to be elegant, memorable, and, let's be honest, a little bit stress-free. The last thing I wanted was to deal with a crying baby, or a parent who had to leave the reception early to attend to a toddler. But I didn't want to sound like a bad friend. I thought about it for a while, and tried to imagine how things would play out with her baby there. It wasn't the baby I had an issue with, it was the potential disruption. I couldn't stop picturing the chaos that might follow. So, after weighing it all, I finally typed out my response. Hey Sarah, I've been thinking about it, and as much as I'd love to see you there, I really don't think it would be ideal to have a baby at the wedding. It's going to be a formal event, and I just don't think it would work with the atmosphere we're trying to create. I hit send and immediately felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Part of me was glad I'd made the decision, but the other part of me feared how she'd react. Sarah and I had been through a lot together, and I knew how much she loved her daughter. I hoped she'd understand, but I also knew how much a mother's attachment could make her defensive. I didn't expect Sarah's reaction to be as intense as it was. The next few hours felt like an eternity. I had sent the message, and now I was just waiting for her to respond. I imagined she'd be a little disappointed, maybe a bit hurt, but she would understand, right? But when her reply came, it completely blindsided me. Wow, I can't believe you're saying no to me bringing my baby. This is a big deal, you know? I don't have anyone to watch her, and you're making me choose between attending your wedding and being a mom. It's really unfair. I thought you were supposed to be my best friend. My heart sank. I stared at the message, rereading it several times to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting it. Sarah had never been one to be this direct or hurtful. I wasn't sure what to feel. Was she really this upset over something as simple as a wedding guest list? I tried to calm myself down before responding. I knew this wasn't just about the baby. It was about something bigger. Sarah had always had a bit of a my way or the highway attitude when it came to anything involving her daughter. It wasn't that I didn't understand. Parenting is hard. And I knew she probably felt defensive, but I still had to stick to my boundaries. I carefully typed back, I get that this is important to you, Sarah, but this is my wedding day, and I've put a lot of thought into how everything will go. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. If that means you can't come, I'll be disappointed, but I respect your decision. I pressed send and immediately regretted the coldness of my response. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also didn't want to compromise the vision I had for my wedding day. After all, this was one of the most important days of my life, and I didn't think that was too much to ask. Minutes passed, then hours. The longer she didn't reply, the more anxious I became. Was she really not going to come? Was our friendship going to be torn apart over this? It felt so small, but it also felt like such a big deal at the time. Finally, Sarah replied. This time, her message was short and blunt. Fine. I guess I won't be there then. I'm sorry you couldn't understand how important this was to me. I stared at the phone screen, a wave of guilt washing over me. Had I made the wrong choice? The next few days were filled with a heavy silence between Sarah and me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake. My wedding was approaching, and I felt like I was carrying an enormous weight on my shoulders. I had never imagined that such a small request could cause such a rift between us. Sarah didn't reach out, and honestly, I didn't know what to say. I kept thinking about how she had reacted to my decision, how quickly she'd dismissed the entire event as unimportant to her because of a baby. I understood that she had a young child and that it was a challenge, but I couldn't help but feel like this was something she should have been able to navigate without making it a personal attack on me. I couldn't shake the thought that our friendship had changed in a way that was irreversible. It wasn't just about the baby anymore. It was about the fact that Sarah wasn't willing to understand my perspective, just as I had tried to understand hers. The trust I had placed in her felt strained, and I wasn't sure how we could move forward from this. The wedding came, and Sarah wasn't there. Part of me hoped she would show up at the last minute, that she would change her mind and find a way to make peace with the situation. But when the ceremony started and I looked out into the crowd, I didn't see her face. I didn't see her sitting in the pews, her usual bright smile replaced by a quiet, understanding expression. Instead, I saw a hole where she should have been. I felt a pang in my chest as the reality of the situation hit me. I had made my decision, and now it had consequences. But I didn't want it to end like this. I didn't want my wedding day to be tainted by anger or resentment. At the reception, the energy was different. I was surrounded by family and friends, but there was an underlying tension that I couldn't shake. Everyone knew what had happened, at least the basics of it. And there were whispers, but no one knew exactly how to approach me about it. I didn't want to discuss it, not today, not on my wedding day. But then, as I was cutting the cake, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. My stomach dropped. I knew this wasn't going to be a simple "I'm sorry" text. "I'm done. I can't believe you chose a dress and a wedding over your best friend. This was a huge moment for me too, and you didn't even care enough to try to understand why I needed my baby there. I'm done. Don't contact me." The words hit me hard. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about Sarah feeling like I had abandoned her. I understood her pain, but I also knew that I had made a choice that felt right to me. I had to stand by it, even if it meant losing her. But now, reading her message, the weight of the consequences settled in. She wasn't just mad about the wedding. She was angry because she felt like I had chosen a moment in my life over our friendship. And in some ways, maybe she was right. After Sarah's message, I spent the rest of the night feeling numb. The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but it now felt overshadowed by guilt and regret. The more I thought about Sarah's words, the more they resonated with me. I hadn't just lost a guest at my wedding, I had lost a friend, and the reason behind it all, a disagreement over a baby, felt so trivial, yet so massive at the same time. I tried to shake it off and focus on the celebration. I danced with my new husband, shared laughs with friends, and tried to immerse myself in the joy of the day. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about Sarah. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the last time we'd ever speak, or if this was something that would haunt our relationship forever. The next few days were no better. I tried to go on with life, unpacking wedding gifts, sending thank you notes, and basking in the afterglow of the celebration. But every time I picked up my phone or went on social media, I saw something that reminded me of Sarah, pictures of other people's weddings, people posting about their kids, friends sending me messages asking about how everything went. Sarah wasn't part of any of it. I knew I had to address the situation. The wedding was over, and things weren't going to magically get better. I had to be the one to make the first move, even if it meant swallowing my pride. But it wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about understanding the deeper issues at play, the expectations we had for each other, the sacrifices we were willing to make for one another, and the way we were both trying to navigate this changing phase of our lives. I decided to reach out. I wasn't sure how Sarah would respond, but I couldn't live with the guilt any longer. So I sent her a message. "Hey, I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I know I messed up. I never wanted to hurt you, and I should have handled things differently. I value our friendship, and I don't want this to be the end between us. Can we talk?" It felt like the right thing to do, but as soon as I hit send, I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. What if she didn't respond? What if it was truly over? I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew I had to take this step if there was any hope of saving our friendship. The hours that followed felt like days. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a response from Sarah, but nothing came. The initial rush of sending the message had worn off, and now I was left with a deep, anxious uncertainty. Was she even going to read it? Or had she already made up her mind that she was done with me? The silence was deafening. I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into other tasks, thank you cards, organizing the wedding photos, unpacking gifts, but I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. I kept thinking about all the good times Sarah and I had shared, all the moments that had bonded us over the years. How had it come to this? How had one disagreement, one choice I made, led us to the point of no return? It wasn't until the next evening that I finally got a response. My phone buzzed, and my heart skipped a beat. I opened the message with shaky hands, half expecting more anger or dismissal. But what I saw was something completely different. I've been thinking a lot too. I'm angry, but I also understand why you did what you did. I just couldn't see it at the time. I was hurt, and I reacted out of frustration. I should have handled it better, and I'm sorry. But that doesn't make what I did right. I miss you, and I want us to figure this out. I stared at the message for a long time, my emotions conflicting. I had expected more blame, more distance, but instead, I saw vulnerability. I saw the Sarah I remembered, someone who wasn't just angry, but also capable of seeing things from my perspective. The floodgates opened, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe we could fix this after all. I quickly typed back, "I miss you too, Sarah. I'm really sorry for how everything went down. I wasn't trying to hurt you, but I realize now how my decision affected you. Can we meet up and talk?" And within minutes, she replied, "Yes, I'd really like that. Let's meet tomorrow." I set up a time for us to meet the following afternoon. I was nervous, but I also felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe we could rebuild what we had, step by step. Maybe this wasn't the end of our friendship. It was just a bump in the road. The next day, I met Sarah at a quiet cafe. It felt surreal, knowing that just days ago, I had kicked her out of my wedding and thought we might never speak again. But here I was, sitting across from her, trying to bridge the gap between us. She was already seated when I arrived, a cup of coffee in front of her, her hands wrapped around it as she stared at the steam rising from the mug. She looked up when I approached, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to say. The tension between us was still thick, but the air felt different now, less angry, more vulnerable. I sat down, and we both just stared at each other for a few seconds, trying to find the right words. "I'm sorry," she said first, breaking the silence. "I acted like a child, and I know I hurt you. I was just so upset, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I should have handled it differently." I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my chest. It felt good to hear her acknowledge what happened, but it wasn't just about the apology. It was about the understanding. We were both realizing that what we had gone through wasn't just about the wedding or the dress. It was about the deeper issues in our friendship. "I get it, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet. "I wasn't trying to hurt you, but I was hurt too. I needed you to understand my perspective, and I wasn't sure if you would, but I see now that you're trying to, and I appreciate that." She smiled, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I felt the tension between us ease. We spent the next few hours talking, not just about the wedding or the baby, but about everything that had been building up in our friendship for months. We talked about our expectations, our frustrations, and our hopes for the future. There was a lot of pain to work through, but we both realized that we had a choice: to hold on to the past and let this be the end, or to forgive and move forward. "I don't expect things to go back to normal right away," I said, my voice soft. "But I want to try, Sarah. I want us to rebuild what we had, but it's going to take time." "I'm willing to take the time," she replied. "I don't want to lose you. You're my best friend, and I've learned a lot from this. I've learned that I can't always make everything about me. I need to be better, for both of us." It was in that moment, sitting there across from her, that I realized something. Friendships, real friendships, are about understanding, compromise, and knowing when to let go of the small stuff. The past few days had been hard, but they also showed me how much Sarah meant to me and how much I valued our bond. It wasn't perfect, but it was worth fighting for. As we parted ways that afternoon, I felt a sense of peace. Things wouldn't be the same as before, but they didn't need to be. We were both willing to grow, and that was enough. The weeks that followed were filled with small but meaningful moments of reconnection. Sarah and I began to text more regularly, but this time, the conversations felt different. They weren't just about casual catch-ups or day-to-day life. They were deeper, filled with apologies, understanding, and a renewed effort to support each other. I felt like we were truly starting over, rebuilding a friendship that had been shaken to its core. We met for coffee again a few times, each time a little easier than the last. I could see Sarah trying to be more mindful of my feelings, and I was making the effort to listen to hers. We both acknowledged that we'd messed up, but we also recognized that we couldn't let one mistake destroy everything we had built over the years. But even with all the healing that was happening, I still had moments of doubt. Would this last? Could we really move forward after everything that had happened? Would the resentment of the past still linger between us? One evening, a few weeks later, Sarah texted me asking if I wanted to meet for dinner. I was excited but also nervous. Would this conversation be just another small step forward, or would it push us backward? I didn't know, but I agreed to meet her. As we sat down at a cozy little restaurant, Sarah looked at me with a serious expression. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she started, her voice steady. "And I wanted to thank you again for not completely giving up on me. I know I messed up, and I know it hurt you. I'm really sorry. But I also want you to know that this has made me think about a lot of things in my life, about how I deal with challenges, about how I handle my emotions, and about how I sometimes prioritize my own feelings over others." I could hear the sincerity in her voice. This wasn't just a sorry for the sake of moving on. This was her acknowledging her own flaws, her own role in what happened. And in that moment, something clicked in me. We weren't just moving past the situation. We were both changing for the better. We were learning to be more aware of each other's needs and emotions. "I'm glad to hear that, Sarah," I said, feeling a sense of warmth in my chest. "I've been thinking a lot too, about how I reacted and how I could have handled things better. I didn't have to shut you out, and I didn't have to let my frustration get the best of me." She smiled, and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us taking in the weight of the conversation. It wasn't just about forgiving each other anymore. It was about growing, learning, and understanding that no relationship is perfect. What mattered was the effort we were both willing to put in. "We've come a long way," I said softly, "and I think we're on the right path." Sarah nodded. "Yeah, we are." As much as Sarah and I had started to rebuild, I knew that it wasn't going to be an easy journey. Trust takes time to rebuild, and just because we were talking again didn't mean everything was magically fixed. There were still moments where I would catch myself feeling a little on edge, unsure of whether I was making the right choice by letting her back into my life. The situation with the wedding had created a divide that couldn't just be erased with a couple of apologies. One day, a few months after our heart-to-heart dinner, I received a call from Sarah. It wasn't unusual for us to talk, but this time her tone was different, nervous, almost hesitant. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice wavering. "It's kind of important." "Of course. What's going on?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. I need a favor. It's a little awkward, but I know I've been doing better, and I want to prove that I'm serious about making things right," she said, her voice shaky. "I have a financial issue. I'm in a bit of trouble, and I need help." I could feel my heart racing. "What kind of trouble, Sarah?" "It's not huge, but I've run into some unexpected expenses. My car broke down, and I can't get it fixed without taking out a loan, and I hate to ask you, but I was hoping you could lend me some money. I know it's a lot, but I really don't have anyone else I can turn to." I sat in stunned silence for a moment. After everything that had happened, I never expected to be put in a situation like this again. This was the test, the moment that would determine whether I had truly healed or whether I was still holding on to the past. I couldn't help but feel conflicted. On one hand, I understood that people make mistakes and that life sometimes throws curveballs. But on the other hand, I had already given Sarah a chance to make things right, and I didn't know if I could afford to keep giving her second chances, especially when it involved money. "Sarah, I don't know what to say. This is a lot," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I don't think I can help you with this right now." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Sarah spoke again. Her voice was softer now, almost like she was ashamed. "I get it. I shouldn't have asked. I'm sorry. I just thought, I don't know. I thought maybe you'd help me because, I've been trying to make up for everything." I felt the weight of her words, and a part of me wanted to help. I really did. But I knew that if I gave in this time, I'd be enabling the same behaviors that had led us to where we were. I couldn't let the past repeat itself, no matter how much I cared about her. "I wish I could, Sarah," I said softly. "But I just can't do it right now. I need to take care of myself first." She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I understand. Thanks anyway. I'll figure it out." The call ended, and I sat there for a long time, letting the silence fill the room. My mind was spinning. Had I made the right choice? I wasn't sure. But deep down, I knew that I couldn't keep sacrificing my boundaries for the sake of someone else's mistakes. I had to protect myself, too. A few days after the phone call, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that what I was going through with Sarah wasn't just about her mistakes or the money. It was about me finding balance, knowing when to offer help, and when to protect myself from being hurt again. I loved Sarah, and I always would, but I had to learn how to set boundaries for my own well-being. The guilt that had initially settled in after I turned her down began to fade. Instead of feeling like I had done something wrong, I started to feel empowered. I hadn't given in to the same patterns that had caused me so much pain before. I had made the right choice. I needed to stand my ground, not just for myself, but for the health of our friendship. A week later, Sarah reached out to me again. This time, her message was different. There was no anger, no accusation, just an understanding that we were both in this together, trying to navigate the complexities of our relationship. "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for being honest with me. I know I asked for something that wasn't fair, and I respect that you said no. It's a hard lesson for me to learn, but I know it's one I need to hear. I'm working on getting things together, and I hope we can keep moving forward." Reading her message made me feel a sense of relief. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't holding a grudge. Instead, she was taking responsibility for her actions. For the first time in a long time, I could see the old Sarah in her words, the one who would learn from her mistakes and come out better on the other side. I took a deep breath before replying, "I'm proud of you, Sarah. We'll get through this, one step at a time. And I'm here for you, just not in the way I was before. We're both learning, and that's okay." We agreed to meet in person a few days later, and when we did, it was like nothing had changed, and everything had changed at the same time. There was a new understanding between us. We didn't need to rehash everything that had happened, because we both knew the importance of moving forward. Over lunch, we joked like we always had, and Sarah shared some positive updates about her life. She was back on track, taking better care of her finances, and working toward a more stable future. It was like watching the old Sarah rise from the ashes of everything that had happened. I couldn't help but smile, knowing that this wasn't just a fleeting moment. This was real progress. Looking back on everything, I realized how crucial it is to protect your boundaries, even when it means making tough decisions. Saying no doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're standing up for yourself and your needs. That's something I had to learn the hard way. I wanted to help Sarah, but I also had to help myself first. If you've ever found yourself in a similar situation where you had to say no to a loved one, I'd love to hear how you handled it. How did you find the strength to protect your own well-being while still caring for someone else? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll be back soon with more stories about life, relationships, and the lessons we all need to learn along the way. Trust me, there's always more to share, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts.